After witnessing his father's tragic demise, a socially inept engineering student creates a robot to exact his revenge. One chaotic evening, a child sees people fleeing in panic as the police move into the area. The men enter a building, slowly creeping toward the target. They come upon an imposing robot with a countdown monitor on its chest connected to numerous gas tanks. The lead policeman alerts his comrades to evacuate the area just as the entire room explodes. Elsewhere, a bruised Weir is handcuffed while an older man interrogates him about his involvement in a crime. He greets Yaya and says he's happy to see him alive even though he had his men capture him. The interrogator opens a file holding information about Ye as his life flashes before him. Weeks ago, Yaya attends engineering class, and in the middle of the lecture, Rika, his best friend, whispers about her car modification project. When Yaya answers, the sharp-eared Professor Faris hears and he calls out to the student to answer the question on the board. A shy man approaches the board and answers it with a new formula the professor never taught the class. When Yaya offers to teach the professor the method, the offended man kicks him out of the class. Disheartened, Yaya hurriedly walks down the corridor and accidentally bumps into a man holding tea. When the furious man Bolivia Rika comes to his rescue, unfortunately yes, Crush Mariam witnesses his cowardice, causing him to flee while Rika escalates the situation at home. Yaya's father Mr. Sailor comforts his son, admitting that he too had similar experiences in his youth. Moments later, the father tells his son he'd like to take a walk and visit the hut. As they exit the house, Nasser arrives on a motorcycle and demands to know where Samu is. Sailor had sent Sama, their maid, to her parents' house for safety. Knowing Nasser's involvement in illegal activities, Sailor's words irritate the arrogant man, and before he leaves he asks Sailor if his wife was the one who called the police. However, Sailor admits it was his doing, cementing the thug's grudge against the older man. After Nasser leaves, the father and son continue to the hut where all of Yaya's hobbies and inventions are. The man asked his father about his stillborn older brother's name, confusing his father, who answers Musa. Upon hearing the word, Yaya introduces his miniature robot with the same name. Yaya explains that he developed Musa and can control it remotely by VR. Said as he puts a device on his head, he says the device will connect to his spinal nerve through his temporal lobe, and via his thoughts alone he is able to control the robot. Ye demonstrates by making the robot easily crush a stone. The proud Sailor applauds his son's achievement. Just as Mariam knocks on their door with concern, she asks if Yaya is alright and only receives a tiny smile in response. Before the awkward man leaves the hut, the woman apologizes to Sally for the sudden visit, but before she turns to follow Yaya there, older man asks her to stay for a while. After sitting down, Sailor asks if she loves his son. She doesn't answer the question but insists that she isn't his friend just because she pities him. Mariam then recounts how she first met Yaya when she asked to borrow his headphones for a piano lesson. She says she tried to return the headphones but no one knew who Yaya was, which made her realize that he didn't have any friends. During the interrogation, Faris asks how Sailor passed away, which Yaya denies ever happened. Weeks ago, Yaya cleans the glass panes while Sailor says Mariam has feelings for him. However, the man believes otherwise because he sees her with a handsome man all the time. To encourage his son, Sailor recounts courting his wife, eliciting a smile from Ye. Then the older man asks Yaya to make some tea while he puts on some music. As the son puts the kettle on the stove, he hears a car outside and peeks through the door. He sees Nasser and two other men exit the vehicle. The thugs enter the house and attack Sailor, causing him to fall to the ground while his son cowardly peeks from the kitchen doorway. Nasser and his men steal cash and other valuables before setting the entire house on fire. After the men leave, the petrified Ye sees his dying father engulfed by flames in the living room. Later, the man sits in front of his fire-ravaged house and watches the medics carry his father's lifeless body into the ambulance. After some time, Mariam visits Yaya and tries to comfort the man, who says he'll sell his house as he only needs the hut. Later that night, Ye sleeps on the cold floor, mourning his loss. The following day, the man goes to the police station to file a report against Nasser. However, the lack of evidence and his questionable credibility as the only witness causes the authorities to doubt his statement. During the interrogation, Faris callously remarks that Yaya should have walked into the fire and died with his father and that he couldn't do it. Because of cowardice, remembering the night Yaya stares at the pile of money after selling the house, and his guilt for leaving his father to die makes him impulsively lock his house, throw the keys out the window and pour alcohol over himself. However, as he holds a lit match, Yaya can't push through with ending his own life and puts out the flame. Then his father appears before him, asking him to avenge his death and change the world. After Yaya turns his back for a split second, his father vanishes, so the man panics and tries to open his locked door, forgetting he threw the keys out the window earlier. Immediately he places his robot in front of the door before controlling it to blast the lock open. He then realizes the incredible power he possesses when he stares at Musa. Inspired, the man works in his hut, planning, building and programming a life-size Musa. On Yaya's last visit to the police station, NASA mocks him, unaware that the man has plans for him in an abandoned building. NASA spots Yaya and orders his men to find him. Yaya hides in one of the rooms while the thug searched the area. Yaya puts on his VR headset and activates Musa, who rolls out from under his car that's parked outside the building. One by one the robot takes out NASA's cronies with ease. Outside, NASA hears the loud sounds coming from inside before finally facing the imposing robot twice his height. Seeing the evil man run away in fear through the VR set, Yaya can't help but smile before throwing a wooden beam to take down the fleeing man. Musa places NASA in the car and seals the door shut with the intense flame in its hand. The robot then flips the car over while tearing the gas tank, blowing up the vehicle. As the robot turns, yes, he's an innocent man filming the riveting events on his phone. He lets the man go despite the possibility of exposing himself to the authorities, and the man immediately uploads the video on the internet. While the video spreads far and wide, Yaya acknowledges his revenge for his father's death with a smile before settling in bed. Elsewhere, a doctor examines Yusuf Farah's son. The doctor reveals that his son's disease is worsening and he needs surgery in Germany that costs €200,000, which the professor can't afford. The doctor then suggests an experiment procedure by a young doctor, but Ferris refuses to place his son at the hands of an inexperienced surgeon. In the middle of their conversation, Ferris receives a call regarding a new assignment, so he leaves the clinic angrily, smashing a glass pane on the door and injuring his hand. One rainy night, Yaya receives a message from an internet friend saying he knows Yaya made Musa after hacking into his computer. Meanwhile, Faris attends a meeting about the robot incident and the official assigns Zakaria and Faris on the case. Later, the police come upon the crime scene, taking notes regarding the dangerous robot's capabilities. Currently, a group of billionaires hold a meeting, discussing their desire to acquire the robot for their own financial gain. They then scheme to plant a spy within the police force to get information. Meanwhile, Rika visits Yaya and they watch Farah's appointment in the investigation team for the robot incident on TV. Then Rika shows him the sketch pad she borrowed and flips to the page, showing Musa's illustration, which implies that she knows about his seat. In a serious tone, the woman says it's alright and she won't tell anybody before asking the man if she can see Musa. Yaya opens the secret door on the floor to his basement and Rika stares at the robot in awe. Later, Rika takes Yaya to her place, showing him her car they can use to transport Musa. They then talk about Yaya's motivation for avenging his father as well as all the people who've been wronged in the world. Yaya observed the artwork on the walls and sees the phrase "the old world must end." Rika says she supports his actions and recites their quote on the wall as their mantra. Then Ye reveals that he has a friend from the dark web who sent him a list of people that need to be stopped because they sell illegal substances, guns and orphans for organ trafficking. The following day, the two friends drive to a warehouse and as they approach the building they unleash Musa from the car in the warehouse. Armed men hear a loud noise from outside. All of a sudden Musa breaks through a wall using a car, prompting the man to fire at the robot. Immediately gets to work and disposes of the criminals, who quickly realizes their rifles aren't slowing Musa down. Unfortunately, a higher caliber machine gun bothers the robot, damaging it to a certain extent that even Yaya is in visible pain while controlling Musa. In the middle of the chaos, Musa is thrown across the room when a leak in gas drum explodes beside him. Then the robot narrowly misses a rocket-propelled grenade. Despite the pain and the damage to the robot, Yaya pushes himself to control Musa. After willing the robot to get back on its feet, Yaya takes the thugs down one by one before finally rescuing the kidnapped children and escaping the area before the authorities arrive. Meanwhile, the police receive receive a phone call about Musa's latest feat and immediately head to the warehouse to investigate, where they find 20 criminals hanging from the ceiling. Varys finds another clue that Musa is remotely controlled and the controller has to be near the crime scene for it to work. Later Rika takes the VR set and asks he controls Musa. In response he takes a lighter and lights the flame near her hand and she reacts quickly. He explains that her spinal reflexes caused her to move her hand away from the flame, and he likens this response to how Musa's controls work. Whatever action she thinks of is then transmitted to the robot, who executes it. Days pass and the vigilante heroes fight crimes all over the city, from rounding up thugs to rescuing children from burning buildings. They leave a lasting impression in people's hearts, and their increasing popularity prompts people to put up posters of support for Musa. Meanwhile, Varys finally invents a counter device for the vigilante robot. One rainy day Rika visits with Maryam. They finally reveal their secret and show her Musa. However, Maryam argues that what they're doing could cost them their lives and discourages them from continuing now that someone else who doesn't support their cause knows their secret. Yaya and Rika must hide everything and move discreetly. Meanwhile, the authorities get a lead from a video showing a car that seems to be hollow, which they might be a vehicle used to carry Musa. They traced the car's license plate to Sailor, who they connect to NASA. The police then search Yaya's hot but find nothing suspicious. While Zakaria interrogates Yaya, Varys leaves the room and follows Hamdi, Zakaria's assistant. He asks the assistant to show him the records room and upon entering asks Hamdi if he's working with somebody else. The assistant denies the accusation, but when the professor is about to inform Zakaria, Hamdi finally falters and admits he works for Samir, Maryam's father and the billionaire who adamantly wishes to procure Musa. After learning this information, Varys promises not to tell anyone about Hamdi's transgressions and leaves that night. Varys rushes his son to the hospital after an episode but still refuses the experimental treatment the doctor offered. After the doctor leaves, Varys assures Yusuf he'll be alright. In response, his son says that he isn't worried because Musa will save him. After hearing his son's words, devises a plan. Forrest meets up with Samir and strikes a deal with the billionaire. He'll leave them to Musa in exchange for the money for his son's treatment. Sensing his desperation, Samir accepts his proposal and they shake hands. The professor immediately devises a plan for a group of men to hijack a train. At the same time, a journalist will take a video of the events and post it on the internet to catch Musa's controllers' attention. Eventually Yes sees the news about the hijacking and the two vigilantes drive toward the train. Another group kidnaps Maryam because they're aware that she is Ye's weakness. While watching the news, the professor calls his men and orders them to detach the train car. Moments later, Musa jumps into the hijacked carriage unaware the men are waiting. Using the jamming device, they interrupt Musa's signal to Yaya's headset, cutting off the controller and allowing the criminals to start dismantling the robot with a chainsaw. Fortunately, a passenger notices this and snatches the jamming device, enabling Yaya to connect with Musa and beat up the criminals. Seeing that the train car's almost fully detached, Musa uses its body as a bridge for people to use to get to the other car. After all the passengers are safe, Musa's body is severely damaged and thrown to the side of the railroad. Later that night, the two vigilantes find a DVD in the hut and play it. They watch the video and learned Maryam's been kidnapped. Rika assumes it's a trap, but he fears for the woman's safety and wishes to save her. He heads to Samir's mansion and informs him that Varys has his daughter. The older man calls the professor and angrily says that abducting his daughter wasn't part of the plan. After sending Varys' full name to his friend from the dark web, Yaya plans to destroy Musa to emphasize his importance as the only person with knowledge of the robot's blueprint, hopefully securing Maryam's safety. He then sends out a video to the world of himself explaining his life and introducing himself as Musa's creator. Before revealing where the robot is, he says his goodbyes to his invention before heading to Farah's hideout to surrender himself. Minutes later, Musa explodes after the police enter the building and Varys receives the news through a phone call the professor that he has to write a blueprint for Maryam's freedom. However, the man also warns him that Samir won't let him off easy if he doesn't let the billionaire's daughter go. Realizing Yaya has a point, Varys orders his men to set the woman free. After hearing her voice through Rika's phone assuring she's safe, Yaya starts writing the blueprint on the wall. He covers his nose and mouth with his shirt while secretly cracking open an ampoule. Meanwhile, Rika closes all the car windows as a vehicle spraying a thick white smoke passes. After the guards cough and pass out from the smoke, a group of men inside a van immediately plant explosives all over the building. The group's leader is Ye's mysterious friend from the dark web inside the building. Faris, who thought the smoke was just routine bug spraying, is unaware of what's happening. Yaya continues writing down the formula when the professor notices that something's amiss, so he escapes. Yaya immediately erases the writings on the wall, but unfortunately can't leave the building as far as men are blocking the exit, so he calls Rika and tells her to drive away, but not before confessing his true feelings for Mariam, something he could never do before. Eventually the planted explosives detonate and walls cave in on Ye. Meanwhile, Faris finds himself stuck at a police checkpoint and realizes he'll get caught either way and resigns to his fate. He calls the doctor and finally agrees to the experimental procedure from the young surgeon. He defeatedly caresses his son's head as he watches Zakaria walk towards his car. Moments later, Yaya's friend enters the building with a card and finds Yaya alive under the rubble. He states that people like them don't die easily before helping his friend out from under the debris and out of the building. Meanwhile, a mysterious man scours the crime scene and finds Moose's intact mainframe on the ground. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.